My name is Sophie Adler. I am 36. I have never been known as the favorite, the wild one, or the outcast. I was always the dependable one. I arrived 5 minutes early, paid the deposit, and kept track of everyone's birthdays. I made sure the Adler clan chat ran smoothly and coordinated rides to the airport for the group. I managed the logistics. When my father lost his footing on the stairs and injured a ligament, I stopped what I was doing. I immediately took a train ticket home and spent 4 nights on his aging pull-out couch. My younger brother, Max, said he would visit if work didn't get too hectic. He never made it. My mother just gave me a smile and called me a lifesaver, then asked if I could swing by to collect her medications before I went home. My younger brother, Max, is 1 year younger than I am and seems to live as if he's immune to facing repercussions. He has a certain charisma. He always has. People say that like it's praise, but when it's your brother and you're the dependable one, it hits differently. Just as I strive to map and replace data efficiently in my work, I think about how AI could revolutionize Facebook advertising. I have developed an AI agent that fully automates Facebook advertising, offering expert-level automation and eliminating the need for expensive media buyers. Trained by over 100 advertising specialists and platform experts, Soku AI handles everything from audience research to budget optimization, consistently achieving an average return on ad spend of 2.79 times. See how Soku AI can democratize advertising expertise for your business. Being the person always footing the bill, I tend to overlook how quickly my patience runs out. He left college after his first year, came back to live at home, moved out, and then returned once more. Whenever he lost a job, my father put the blame on his manager. When he needed support, my mother always insisted he was still figuring things out. I maintained consistency in my own path. I've been employed in logistics since I was 23. I live by myself just outside Boulder. My place at Willow Park Condominiums is tidy and calm. I have a good relationship with Frank Donnelly, my building manager, and even know Carlos Reyes, the grocery store clerk, by name. That's pretty much it for my social circle. I don't try to stand out. Having routines is important to me. I take pride in being reliable. Yet, there's a drawback to being seen as the reliable person. People don't really notice me, do they? The first spring I truly realized this was at a family group photo during Olivia Meyer's wedding. The request was for everyone to wear coordinated colors. Nothing overly bold. Someone remarked that the outfit I chose was burgundy. It happened in February. I found that everything was done in good taste. Later on, when the framed photos arrived, I noticed I had been edited out of them. My aunt explained with a cheerful grin that they simply needed the picture to work for the design. She asked if I understood, and I said I did. I always said yes to that question, because if I gave a different answer, I'd get that look. The look that said, "You're making this more difficult than necessary." So I kept on smiling. I kept driving. I kept paying. I kept showing up. Even on occasions when nobody bothered to save me a spot, I never demanded much from anyone. All I wanted was to be part of things without having to contribute just to earn my place. I wanted to feel like I belonged without constantly shouldering other people's burdens. However, I realized that within my family, being helpful was the price I paid to be allowed in. Eventually, someone forgot to ask for that price. That was the moment when everything began to change. It all started with a phone call. My mother, Eleanor Adler, never calls me during the day unless there's either a problem or she needs a favor. When that Thursday rolled around, I ignored the call and let it go to voicemail. My mother left me a message. "Hello, sweetheart," she started, using that sweet, high-pitched tone she reserves when she's about to ask me for something. "I just thought about how wonderful it would be if you joined Max and Lydia's engagement dinner next month. It will be held on a rooftop. Very sophisticated. It's just family and a handful of close friends." That's when she got to the real purpose for her call. They were hoping I could help by putting the reservation on my card to guarantee it. They'd reimburse me, of course. Naturally. I listened to the message 3 times. Then I phoned Amaretto Rooftop, arranged a private space for 20 guests, and put down a $550 deposit. The lady on the line asked whether I had any special instructions. I let her know to arrange floral centerpieces and ensure that the lighting would work well for taking pictures. I wasn't upset. Not at that point. My younger brother was about to propose. His ex-fiancée seemed perfectly all right. The only time we'd met was at a birthday lunch, and she hardly glanced up from her SoundStream feed. Yet my mother insisted Lydia was an angel and exactly the steadying influence Max needed. I understood the subtext. Lydia's family had wealth. Her father owned a company called Summit Access Agency down in San Diego. They were the sort who mailed out holiday cards on thick matte paper adorned with gold embossing. Several days after I made the booking, my mother sent me a message. "Everything's set. Thanks so much, sweetheart. You're wonderful." There was no hint about reimbursing me. Regardless, I purchased a new jacket and neatly pressed trousers. I chose a bottle of aged Pinot Noir and had a personalized card made with their initials in silver foil. I even scheduled a blowout for my hair that afternoon, something I hadn't treated myself to in over a year. Because deep down, some naive and battered part of me still clung to the hope that maybe things would turn out differently this first spring. Perhaps this time, I'd have a place that truly belonged to me. Maybe people would notice me for my real self, instead of what I could do for them. I thought I might finally be invited into the picture instead of being left on the sidelines. On the evening of the dinner, I showed up 5 minutes early. It was early December, and the last rays of sunlight were just beginning to vanish beyond the cityscape. The rooftop glowed with golden, gentle Edison bulbs swaying softly in the nighttime air. In one corner, the Blue River Quartet played, offering mellow trumpet sounds and silvery brushes on cymbals. It was clear someone had spared no expense. I chose a fitted navy blazer, sleek black slacks, and low-heeled shoes. My hair, thanks to the blowout, still maintained its style. I clutched the bottle of wine in one hand and held the card in my other. The hostess called me by name and gestured for me to enter the private area. "Your party's already seated," she said with a smile. I entered, making sure my shoes didn't mark up the floor. Fresh flowers adorned every table. Candles flickered beside immaculate flatware, and cloth napkins were crisply arranged in pointed triangles. That's when I spotted my parents, my younger brother Max, Lydia Sinclair, her relatives, and some of their friends. Drinks were in everyone's hands. The room was alive with laughter that sounded both effortless and familiar. Max turned toward me as soon as he recognized me. He stayed where he was, offered a lazy wave, and said, "Hey, you made it." His eyes landed briefly on the wine I held before he walked past me, as if I were just some stranger from the lounge. After that, he nodded off to the side. "So, yeah, that table's just for family and all, but we found you a seat just over there." I followed the direction of his pointing finger. There was a fold-up chair pressed against the wall, right next to a plastic garbage bin with a black liner. The small round table beside it was clearly meant for spillover. Only one chair, and not a single place setting. My mother offered her signature strained smile, the kind that pleads, "Just don't make this harder." My father lifted his glass in an awkward, half-hearted salute. Lydia kept her focus on her phone and didn't acknowledge me. I lingered there briefly, the wine bottle slick in my grip. Eventually, I gave a nod, made my way over, took a seat, and set the bottle on the floor. I decided to leave my coat on. A waiter appeared and asked if I was with the main group. I confirmed that I was. He set down a glass of water in front of me, and that was it. Throughout the following 75 minutes, I observed as they raised their glasses and passed around dishes. We unwrapped little presents. Max gave a toast about finding true love and being surrounded by those who matter the most. I saw my mother quietly dab at her eyes when Lydia described her as the ideal mother-in-law anyone could wish for. Nobody glanced in my direction. Nobody checked whether I'd had anything to eat. I fixated on the napkins at their table, each one neatly and perfectly arranged. There were none at mine. For dessert, they had just brought out an extravagant multi-layered creation adorned with gold leaf and freshly whipped cream. Someone took a picture of the dish before anyone could try a piece. Blue River Quartet transitioned into a mellow classic. The sunlight had disappeared, leaving only the city's glow and the frigid shimmer of metal along the horizon. I had not uttered a word since sitting down. Not a single person approached me. My jacket was still fastened. Right then, the server reappeared, carrying a compact leather folder in his hand. He paused next to our table, eyeing the bill before glancing in my direction. "Pardon me, ma'am," he murmured. "Your total comes to $2,750. Should I charge the same card we have saved for you?" People's attention shifted toward us. Max glanced up from his piece of cake. "Oh, right," he responded, giving a relaxed nod. "She has it." The server returned his gaze to me. I drew in a deliberate breath before offering a soft smile. Not broad, not icy, simply resolved. "Actually," I replied, making sure my voice stayed soft yet strong, "that isn't my table." A silence hovered, heavy enough to sap the energy in the space. "They said it was only for relatives," I clarified. "My spot is here." My mother stopped with her wine glass midway to her lips. Lydia met my eyes for the first time all evening. Her father furrowed his brows. My younger brother's mouth went taut. The server looked uncertain, pausing. "But ma'am, you were the one who made the reservation?" "Did I really?" I gave a nod. "I made the reservation, paid the down payment, placed the flower order, but I skipped eating. I wasn't made to feel at home. My name wasn't on that table's check." Silence filled the air. Only the tiny sound of a lighter could be heard as someone struggled to reignite a candle. I got to my feet, grabbed my jacket, and gave one final look at the folding chair, which was still turned a little toward the trash bin. Evidently, that's where I truly fit in. And I kept walking, not hurriedly, not as a performance, just moving forward at an even pace. The server was still clutching the check as I walked by. Behind me, my younger brother's voice rang out. His tone was partly a chuckle, partly sharp. "Seriously, Sophie, it was meant as a joke. Are you really leaving?" I didn't look back. I had no reason to. I didn't head home immediately. For a while, I continued along, down 2 blocks, past Daisy's Bakehouse, shutting its doors for the night, and then past a line of idling cars coated in fog on the windows. I was still clutching the unopened bottle of wine. When I arrived back at Willow Park condominiums, I kept my coat on and stood in the kitchen for several moments, allowing the silence to linger. The initial message arrived 45 minutes later. "Max, naturally. You couldn't just pay and speak to me afterward." Next was a message from my mother. "You made us look bad in front of Lydia's entire family. Was that what you wanted?" Neither of them checked if I had gotten home all right. I put my phone on silent, but around 9:50, it flashed again. An unfamiliar number. I let it ring through to voicemail, but the caller tried a second and third time. Eventually, I picked up. "Hi, this is Lydia." Her tone sounded gentler than I recalled. There was no social media gloss, no exaggerated sweetness. "I realize we haven't had much conversation," she began, "but could I ask you something?" I waited. "Did you seriously pay for all of it? The down payment, the floral arrangements, and that scenery?" I rested my back against the countertop. "Yes, I did." She didn't say anything for a short while. "They told my father that my younger brother, Max, had arranged everything. They said the whole event was his idea, that he covered all the expenses. They claimed I had asked to be seated away from everyone because I was shy. That final comment made me let out a huff through my nose. I never pushed for anything, I replied. They offered. I agreed. I wasn't hoping for anything in return, but I didn't ask to be some token either. Another silence. Then she started again. My father is livid. He said he never would have agreed to Amaretto Rooftop if he had known someone separated at a table was paying for it all. I said nothing in response. I'm not picking a side, I said. I just thought you ought to hear it. The call ended soon after that. There was no awkwardness, no expressions of gratitude, just a soft click as the call ended, as if neither of us was sure how to move forward with what remained. The quiet that followed felt even more oppressive than all the words that had been exchanged. Yet this time, it wasn't my burden to shoulder. The next morning, the Adler clan chat was exploding with messages. For days before the dinner, things had stayed silent in the Adler clan chat. Normally, it only got busy during holidays, or if someone shared a grainy photo of a birthday dessert. This time, though, the notifications just kept coming. Eleanor, we should have a conversation. Give me a call when you have a chance. Max, you really messed things up with Lydia's relatives. You need to fix this for us. This is spiraling. Just say you're sorry and let's get past it. I didn't join in. After reading the messages a single time, I archived the conversation and went to brew some coffee. What happened wasn't really about the folding chair at all. The wine and the missing place setting weren't the real issues either. It was the gradual piling on of responsibilities. I never volunteered to be the default driver, the emergency fallback, or the person to cover forgotten expenses. And now that I had finally pulled away, everyone seemed confused by the absence I left behind. By the end of the week, the situation took another turn. A friend of my younger brother Max, Zach Hopkins, a guy I hardly knew aside from his polite nods at our family gatherings, contacted me unexpectedly. Paul Sinclair had a complete breakdown on Saturday. An honest-to-goodness breakdown. As Zach told me, Paul discovered the entire truth. The real cost of the dinner, all the lies, the improvised chair, and the unpaid tab from when I left. He was furious, not just with Max, but with everyone involved in the whole staged act. Reportedly, he said, if this is how they treat family, what will they do to an outsider? The following day, Lydia packed up and left Max's place at Willow Park Condominiums to return to Mapleview Residences. My Pinterest boards vanished. The venue reservation was called off. Our joint calendar, once packed with train tickets, gown appointments, and tastings, was suddenly empty. My younger brother tried to phone me 3 times. I ignored each call. He recorded a voicemail on the 9th. Just fix this. Please speak to Lydia's father. Tell him it was simply a mix-up. You're blowing this out of proportion. The truth was, it had never been just a mix-up. It was a repeated cycle. And cycles continue unless someone decides to end them. I used that evening to tidy my kitchen drawers, relocate the wine bottles to a lower cabinet, and cancel a credit card my younger brother Max had borrowed for emergencies but never gave back. It seemed minor, but it marked a beginning. Later that night, I logged into the Mountain Vista Credit Union account that Max Adler and I once shared from when he was between jobs, and needed a place for his last freelance payments. A few $1,000s remained in that account, funds I had almost forgotten. He hadn't. The SoundStream subscription was still active. His Active Life Fitness membership was also running, along with 3 Quick Dish Services apps, each discreetly billed to an account I knew he no longer paid into. I moved the remaining funds into my own personal savings. After that, I called Mountain Vista Credit Union and shut the account down for good. It brought a sense of closure. The following morning, Max phoned me 3 times before midday. On the 12th, I finally answered. What the hell, Sophie? There was a sharpness and urgency in his tone. My card didn't work. It said the account had disappeared. I stayed silent. That evening, I'd arranged dinner plans with Lydia. I had intended to take her to Trattoria del Lago, her favorite spot. Now I couldn't even order a ride. I inhaled slowly, giving myself a moment before responding. I closed the account. You did what? You can't do that. I can, I said plainly, and I already have. He was quiet. Then his voice shifted to that familiar, coaxing, evasive pitch I always recognized in him when being charming wasn't enough. Come on, Sophie. Please don't go down this path. You're envious. Just confess it. You could never stand that I was the one people noticed. That response made me giggle. Not angry, just exhausted. Max, do you honestly believe Paul Sinclair is still backing you up? Nothing but quiet followed. Relax, I told him. I always managed to sort things out. Perhaps my mother could open yet another card for me, or my dad might speak with her once more. That approach tended to be effective. Enough, I told myself. I disconnected the call. That was the final time he phoned me. Several hours afterward, I received a message. The subject was, I think we need to talk. It was sent by Lydia Sinclair. I waited until later that night before reading her email. The subject line, I think we need to talk, felt weightier than it probably should have. I brewed some tea, took a seat next to the window, and then opened the message. The email was longer than I anticipated, courteous, but coming apart at the edges. She opened by explaining she hadn't realized how things looked until everything unraveled. Not until Lydia's father began probing for answers. Neither she nor Max could explain. I was so intent on making sure it was flawless, she wrote, that I never paused to wonder who was actually keeping things together. She confessed that she trusted Max when he told her I had insisted on covering the costs, that I didn't enjoy being around groups, and that I liked to stay apart. After that, she personally called Amaretto Rooftop, spoke with the manager, and obtained the detailed bill. That's when everything changed. I broke off the engagement last night, she wrote. Not simply because of a single evening, but because of everything it revealed to me. She recounted my younger brother's habits, how he would minimize her issues, joke away her tears, and accuse everyone of being overly sensitive once problems became serious. I was the only person who remained composed, she said. I was the only one nobody glanced at. The message lingered there for some time before I continued on. She didn't ask anything in return. She wasn't seeking sympathy. She simply wrote, I see it now, and I'm sorry I didn't realize it earlier. I read her message 3 times, then tucked it away in my archive. That was all I needed. There are moments when an apology isn't meant to make things better. Instead, it felt as if a little burden had been lifted from my heart. The following day, the Adler clan chat was silent once more. And for the first spring, I didn't find myself hoping they'd check in. I had stopped expecting it. I came on a Saturday. I caught the sound of her knock a bit after midday. When I let her in, my mother was on the other side, wrapped in a long sweater and holding a glass pan of lasagna. There was fatigue in her expression. She had no makeup on. Only a faint trace of lipstick remained, barely visible at the corners. I brought you a meal, she said. I left the item untouched and simply opened the door a bit more. She entered softly without a word. She chose the chair at the kitchen table instead of the living room couch or the counter stool, the one that was usually reserved and empty, directly across from me. She sat down there. Her fingers looked identical, fidgeting with the same restless tapping as always. Yet during this visit, she didn't repeat any memorized excuses. There were no explanations like, no, he didn't mean that, or suggestions that I was just exhausted. First she glanced down, and then her eyes met mine. "I have to apologize to you," she said. I folded my arms and waited in silence. "Only a single apology?" I pressed. She pressed her lips together tightly before letting them part. Well, honestly, it was probably more than one. She inhaled, slower than I had ever seen her do before. I missed it entirely. Not because it wasn't there, but because I refused to admit it. As I fixed my gaze on my hands, it was as if I believed they could reveal what I couldn't put into words. I never expected anything from us. That made it simpler for us to overlook how much I was always giving. I remained silent. That wasn't the right thing to do. Now I've come to realize that. Our conversation didn't last long. She set down the lasagna, and I walked her to the door. Standing in the doorway, she glanced over her shoulder once. "Take care of yourself." After that, she walked away, and the chair stayed unmoved. At last, someone had occupied it. A few weeks afterward, I reserved a train ticket to Spain. That journey was something I had postponed 3 times. Once because my father needed surgery, once because my younger brother couldn't keep an eye on my home during my absence. This trip, nobody inquired. I didn't bring it up. Valencia was chilly by night and comfortable when the sun was up. I wandered tranquil lanes, sipped coffee that felt timeless, and purchased a little wooden chair from a craftsman who would carve my initials into it if I requested. I chose not to ask. I preferred the chair unadorned. Upon returning, I set the chair on my balcony and turned toward the east. Quiet and sturdy, the seat is barely large enough for me to settle in, good for reading or simply sitting with my thoughts. Max hasn't reached out since then. As far as I've heard, he's staying with my parents, Eleanor and Richard Adler, putting in unpredictable shifts at a startup he keeps private. The wedding has been completely called off. Lydia gave the engagement ring back. These days, my parents sometimes send messages to me individually. The messages are brief, with no demands, just allowing for distance. They asked me to join them for Thanksgiving. My mother wrote, "Only if you're up for it." I still haven't replied. I bought myself a pair of noise-canceling headphones. I started picking up books again, actual novels instead of self-help manuals. I even reached out to a therapist, not because I felt broken, but because I'd finally stopped longing for recognition. I hadn't settled their tab that evening, but I made good on a backlog of quiet resentments over the years, and I'm no longer dumping myself next to the garbage. Now I sit at my own table, in the chair I picked for myself,